And for more on this, let's bring in the former U.S. Deputy Military Representative to NATO and Newsmax contributor, retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General Blaine Holt, along with the editor-in-chief at the Foreign Desk, counterterrorism and foreign policy expert Lisa Daftari, and national security correspondent Carla Babb. Welcome to all of you. General, I'm going to start with you here. Obviously, these talks coming up in just a couple days. How do you think they will play out? Obviously, the peace plans, the one submitted by Iran, the one submitted by the United States, obviously quite different.
Well, they're different, and I'm not altogether sure that we have a good understanding about what that communication is back and forth. We see a lot of bullets flying around screens in terms of what we think the points are, but we're looking at an Iran that is a defeated military force. That's one. Two, we may not even make it to these negotiations because honestly, what John just reported is the stick point. It is about the interpretation of is Hezbollah and Lebanon in the ceasefire or out of the ceasefire. So the United States knows what it negotiated to get to the ceasefire. We're going to have to adjudicate what that is. But if Iran says, no, we're going to pick up the war from here, I can tell you, I've been watching the Straits of Hormuz on the tracker all morning long. Not anything is moving through there. And so we could lose this by tonight.
Yeah, certainly. We might not make it to those discussions. And this is the White House press secretary just a few moments ago discussing that 10-point plan. Here's what she had to say. Watch.
The Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan that was fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It was literally thrown in the garbage by President Trump and his negotiating team. Many outlets in this room have falsely reported on that plan as being acceptable to the United States, and that is false.
So right there, unrealistic expectations there from Iran in terms of their way of how the ceasefire should go. Lisa, over to you. You've got President Trump. He wants the Strait of Hormuz open, but do you think that he's going to have some sort of leeway here on Lebanon and Hezbollah?
No, it's interesting. Both sides think that they can claim victory in this war, and both sides seem to think that they have the leverage here. Since the ceasefire was announced, we see Iran's regime continuing with missiles into the Persian Gulf Arab states, into Israel, claiming that the war is not over, and again threatening to close off the Strait of Hormuz. As the general said, there's no action there this morning. So we're not seeing them keep to their word as of now. I think it's very important for the regime to understand that the president will not accept a bad deal, that he will verify that what happens in negotiations on Friday in Islamabad can determine whether or not this ceasefire will hold. And the most important thing is to maintain the pressure. Look, I think most of us who have been studying this part of the world for a long time would have preferred that we negotiate under the military campaign ongoing and not under a ceasefire where we maintain the pressure on Iran's regime, because that seems to be what they do respond to, that force. But I think they need to understand that that pressure will be maintained. The carriers will stay there, forces will stay there, and that we can restart this war as soon as the president wants.
Carla, I want to get your thoughts on what we are looking forward to happening in just a few hours. Of course, Secretary General of NATO Mark Rutte meeting with President Trump. We all know that President Trump has not been happy with NATO. Of course, he has voiced that, but he and Rutte usually have a fairly good relationship. How do you think these talks will go?
It's unclear at this point because, yes, as you said, the president and Rutte do have a very good working relationship. But, you know, privately, NATO officials and European officials have been telling me about this war. You know, they were blindsided. And every other war that the United States has been involved in, they would consult with their allies. They would work with their allies beforehand. And so a lot of the things that the president has thrown on the table that are the responsibility of NATO in his eyes, NATO is trying to catch up, and they're trying to figure out what they can do to contribute now that they're behind in this. And so I know that's a difference of opinion, but we saw Caroline Leavitt say that the president is considering pulling out of NATO. And now I have been told repeatedly by defense experts and officials, military officials, that NATO and the United States together is the greatest deterrence you can think of when you're looking at a Russia or a China, because the U.S. alone is strong, the most powerful, arguably the most powerful country in the world, most powerful military in the world. But you add that with Europe, And that is the true deterrence, because China and Russia look at that NATO alliance and say, we can't beat it.
Right.
And that's the strength, the overwhelming strength that officials will say that you need. And so as we look at the meeting, that's Marco Rubio meeting with Rutte, I know that is going to be something that NATO officials are going to be repeatedly reminding the United States.